days left until the midterms, and as Democrats try to unite under an anti-American, anti-police, pro-open borders, pro-communist China umbrella, the White House knows what's at stake. They lose the House, it's going to be nonstop investigations and impeachment hearings, not to mention all the roadblocks to our economic revival. And if the DSA surge continues to 2028, the country that we love may be lost forever. We sat down with Vice President Vance for a sneak preview of the Trump-Vance midterm campaign that's about to kick off in earnest. Mr. Vice President, thank you for joining us tonight.
Of course. Good to see you.
So Abdul El-Sayed was outspent like 9-1 in Michigan, but
Sure.
he still edged out a victory over Haley Stevens.
That's right.
What does this tell us?
Well, I think it says a couple things. First of all, the base of the Democratic Party just wants radicals. It wants these DSA types. It wants people who hate even the idea of private property ownership. But it also, I think, tells us that that particular set of ideas is very popular in places you wouldn't expect. Because Al-Sayed, he's this guy who holds himself out as a working class hero, as a guy who's going to fight for the working class. How does he fight for the working class? By flooding his state and his country with low-wage immigrants. Of course, those people will drive down the wages of the working class. And he also doesn't want to do anything to protect the Michigan auto industry. He has fought against the Trump tariffs that have saved the Michigan auto industry. So, interestingly, as much as the media will pull this guy out as a socialist, as a guy who's trying to stand up for the working man, where did he do the best? He did the best among wealthy white liberals and among new immigrants to the United States of America. He basically represents the modern Democratic coalition, which is self-hating white liberals united to people who just came to the country for the first time and don't actually have the sense of appreciation for it that they should. Those are the people who are voting for Al-Sayed. He doesn't have a constituency among the working class he pretends to represent.
She won the working class enclaves last night.
Exactly.
And he actually won the more affluent, more highly educated sections of the state. What does that tell us about education in the United States, especially at the university, college, and high school level?
Well, I think what it tells us is that a lot of young Americans were sold a whole promise at the elite universities in our country. And that promise is that they were going to be able to go to college, get a degree, and everything was going to work out fine for them. I think in reality, actually, a lot of universities sold these kids a bill of goods. They gave them a lot of debt. They did not give them useful skills or a useful credential. And a lot of these kids are very angry. But that really is, if you look at the data, Laura, the base of the Democratic Party today is downwardly mobile, hyper-progressive, well-educated people. People, I think, who were sold a bill of goods by universities have a lot of debt, but not a good job to show for it.
But they say they can't afford a home. The average home ownership is up to like 42 years of age. 10, 15 years ago, it was much lower. There's concern about the cost of living, still high energy prices, $100 to fill my tank today. What does the Republican Party, specifically the administration, need to do better on that front? Because there are real strains out there.
Well, I think that what it shows is that the past 40 years of economic policy, bipartisan economic policy, have failed. I think a lot of people look at El-Sayed or a lot of these other radical candidates and they say socialism is evil. They're right. Socialism is evil. But we have to ask ourselves the question, why is socialism so appealing to a lot of people who, to your point, have lower assets, who don't have the same ownership, who went to universities and were sold a bill of goods? They got a lot of debt, but they didn't necessarily get the good jobs that came along with that high debt load. And I think our answer to that, and by the way, you've already seen a lot of it in the Trump administration, is number one, protect American manufacturing. The manufacturing economy is the foundation of the middle class. We see this in Europe. We saw it in the United States. Every country that sells its industrial base to the highest foreign bidder loses its middle class and sees socialism come on the back end. What I think is actually going to happen is these socialist candidates, they've caught the tail end of an economy that wasn't working for most Americans. Unfortunately for them, the Trump economy has made long-term investments in rebuilding that manufacturing base and making America energy independent and actually making it possible to own a home, to have a family, to build the real elements of middle-class life
The manufacturing numbers that came out this week were unbelievable. The trade deficit cut, exports up. So
yes, and that, by the way, Laura, 40 years of bad economic policy, you're not going to fix that in 18 months. But what you're seeing with the president is trillions of dollars of new investment, new factories being built, the manufacturing numbers are coming back in a big way. That is how you fight socialism, by actually giving people a middle class opportunity.
Who's beating us in the
that
G7?
Is better.
Who's beating us in the G7?
Nobody is beating us.
How about Canada? How are they doing?
They're doing terribly.
So they want us to copy France, Canada, and other countries that are failing? How does that work?
Well, the way that it works, and this is exactly what all-cited and these limousine socialists are actually selling to the American people, they're not promising you industry, they're not promising you good jobs, they're not promising self-sufficiency and a good industrial economy. What they're promising is redistribution. Again, we've seen this in Europe and in the United States. The idea that you can build real prosperity by just redistributing assets from one group to another group, that's not how you build real prosperity. You have to actually sustain the foundation of the economy. That is what the President of the United States has worked us towards for the past 18 months. It's going to continue to pay dividends. But I think, again, Laura, this is an important point. A lot of Americans look at this rising tide of socialism and say, how did we get here? We got here by 40 years of bipartisan leaders selling our industrial base to foreign countries, allowing low-wage immigrants to come in and compete with Americans for jobs, by destroying the foundation of the middle class. That's how you got socialism. How you fix that problem is by doubling down on Donald Trump's economic nationalism, not going back to the way we've done things for the past 40 years.
It's failed everywhere it's tried.
It's failed everywhere it's tried, and it always leads to socialism. It always leads exactly where we are. The only way to get out of it is to double down on the economics of the past 18 months.
This fraud task force, the findings are mind-blowing.
Shocking.
$236 billion uncovered. You've said that's the tip of the iceberg. You said someone like an all-cited would undo all the progress that you've made in rooting out the fraud and then going to recapture that money, which is a big part of this.
Yep.
How much can you get back? What do you expect the socialists would do with these large government bureaucracies that are obviously way too open to be exploited for fraud?
Well, we don't have to guess. They're telling us that they want to fight against our anti-fraud effort. They see our anti-fraud effort as racist or as xenophobic. And my attitude is, I don't care where you came from. I don't care what your name is. If you are committing fraud against the American people, all of us in public leadership should be trying to stop it and try to throw you in prison for enriching yourself off the American taxpayer. Again, this is why these people, the all-cieds of the world, don't do very well among actual working class constituencies, is because the people that I grew up around, they don't want to be defrauded. They don't want to pay their taxes and then have that tax go to a fraudulent Somali daycare center. If they pay money in order to ensure that a young mom has neonatal care, they want that money to go to the young mother. They don't want it to go to a fraudster, which, by the way, we just stopped a massive fraud program that was enriching people who were supposed to be providing services to young moms and their babies. So I actually think that if these people, if the socialists cared about working class Americans, they would help us in their fraud efforts, but they don't. What they actually care about is illegal aliens and allowing illegal aliens to enrich themselves. That has always been the gambit of these limousine socialists. Again, that's why they do well, not among immigrant communities that have assimilated, that are entrepreneurs, that are doing well in the United States of America. They're doing the best among the communities where you see the highest fraud levels, and they're doing the best among affluent white liberals. That is the new fusion of the Democratic Party.